A+.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Fourth and Frames, the offensive, as opposed to the offensive portion of our podcast doubleheader tonight. I'm your host, Jorge Edwards, and with me, you got the usual crew, Nate Markham and Brian Ford. Brian, we'll start with you this week. How are you doing, man?
Pretty good. It's been a long day, kind of tired, been real busy. And can I just say that between buys and injuries this week, I am running out some pretty gross lineups, especially in some of my deep dynasty leagues. I am not looking forward to some of the choices this week.
Yeah, fantasy can suck it this week. Week 6 is it's bad. There are some rosters where I have like 7 people on bye, and I would have to drop so many good people on my bench. It's like, no, just conceding. Just going to lose this week. Not going to do anything crazy.
There's so many leagues where other people. I mean, everybody's in very similar gambit. I think this is the week where all the shitty teams that have players from bad teams might actually win because they don't have bye weeks. All their crap's coming up later last week.
Pretty much. What about you, Nate? How you doing, buddy?
Good. Not too bad. I feel like letting everybody know that Brian is in second place in Scott Fish. You are in first in the 4-Eyed Championship. I'm in first in IDP Championship. And we get to talk football for an hour with each other, 2 hours for me and you. So
that's right. Can't
get much better than that.
Nice. Let's get into some interesting news. There's not a lot on offense to really go off of. I mean, Julio Jones is hurt again. Tell me if you heard that story before, even though he had that pretty good catch, amazing catch, a great catch. I shouldn't say amazing, but it was a great catch on Monday Night Football. Getting that ball off the helmet, that was pretty neat. Let's see here. I guess the big news heading into tomorrow for Thursday Night Football is, no Nick Chubb,
right?
No Kareem Hunt, no Baker Mayfield. Case Keenum's the starting quarterback. The last time Case Keenum was the starting quarterback, I believe, don't quote me, but I believe it was when he was with Washington. And I also believe that the last time he was with a deep receiving threat, like, for example, Terry McLaurin was getting fed all season long until they for whatever reason took Case Keenum out as the starting quarterback. I think Alex Smith. I think that was it when Alex Smith came back. I don't know. Memory is a little foggy there. But the point is that he knows to feed the alpha wide receiver on an offense. So the question is, and I'll ask both of you guys right now, is Odell Beckham ready to become the alpha wide receiver this week, or do you think that Donovan Peoples-Jones is the real alpha in that receiving coordinate?
No. It's going to be, I think there'll probably be a 45% target share to the tight ends. And I can't see a situation that, because even isn't Beckham kind of banged up too? I mean,
I think he's like, I don't know. He dislocated his shoulder, but
yeah, I don't know. I have a hard time ever just banging the drum on Beckham or Donovan Peoples-Jones. I mean, I like the DFS Donovan Peoples-Jones better. Hey, let's put him in here versus I have to start him, the ugly Brian lineup that he has to set, unfortunately.
Or more importantly, this week, you don't want to burn that roster spot that you're dropping to pick him up for somebody that
Hell no.
Yeah, that's not happening. Let's get into. Does anybody else have any new news? If not, we can get into our prime matchups.
I mean, real quick, I like to get maybe Nate's take on this because you're an offensive line guru as far as I'm concerned. Left tackle on the Ravens, Lonnie Staley, season-ending ankle surgery. What does that mean for this week against the Bengals?
I think that personally, the biggest challenge when you lose a tackle on an RPO-heavy team is that to me is the most difficult thing for an offensive lineman to probably next to the running back is to get comfortable knowing how far up you can block and when to stop your block, because obviously if if he decides to pass and you continue the block into the second level, then illegal man downfield. And I think there's a lot of learning curve that has to go into that a little bit. I think it throws off your rhythm, but Staley had missed some time here and there anyway. So hopefully they're a little acclimated. They're banged up across that offensive line between, Villanueva has been terrible. He's gotten better the last couple weeks, but I think Cincinnati, Trey Hendrickson, maybe Sam Hubbard, and in the middle of that defensive line is going to put a lot of pressure on Lamar.
Okay.
A lot of pressure.
Maybe a good running day for him?
Potentially. Might be a good day for continue on with Mark Andrews, and maybe I'd love to say some dump offs, but I don't like any of the running backs in that running back stable, if you want to call it a stable. The only thing close to a stable is that it smells like shit.
Nice. Very nice.
Sorry.
All right, cool. Well, if you don't have anything else, let's get into our prime matchups of the week, where we look at quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight end. We give you a player that we think is going to excel greatly at that position. So let's get this going with the quarterback position. Mm-hmm. Brian, who do you got as a good streaming option or just option this week?
Yeah, so I'm looking at a couple guys here that are good for Superflex or streamers, although might be rostered already in a lot of leagues. So Tua at home against Atlanta, who's 28th against quarterbacks as far as giving up fantasy points go, 31st in pass rush and 21st in coverage, both according to PFF. I know there's these rumors of this Deshaun Watson trade and everything like that, but he looked good, pretty good against Jacksonville. He feeds Waddle and Gesicki. I think he can, continue to do the same against a not so great Atlanta defense. I think he's in a good position, and in a game where he might not have to throw as much, Stafford against the Lions is a little juicy for me too.
Revenge game narrative, as everybody wants to always point out.
The revenge game is for Goff, not for Stafford.
Right, exactly. But no, everything's a revenge game. If you've ever played for the team, if you've ever been to the city, if you know someone that lives in that city,
or if your uncle's favorite restaurant in that city, guess what?
Exactly. Revenge game narrative.
Exactly. I'll go next with running backs and wide receivers. I kind of have two running backs, one on the same team. One you probably are starting week in and week out normally, but the other one you may have on your bench, or he may be on your waiver wire, depending. I'm talking about the Rams duos of Darrell Henderson and Sony Michel this week. The Lions are giving up the third most fantasy points to running backs and are 24th best at defending the run, which not great. The Rams have the 7th best run blocking unit. I see this game getting out of hand pretty quickly, and them just kind of icing the game for the rest of the fourth quarter and just watching these Rams running backs get their stats and pad their stats. So fire either one of those guys up. And then at wide receiver, coincidentally, it's in the same game. And Brian, you were talking about him all offseason, but for a good chunk of the offseason. Rookie Amon-Ra St. Brown for the Detroit Lions. The past 2 weeks, he leads the team in targets. Mm-hmm. Most snaps out of the slot has been his MO this season. Going against the Rams that allow 24.9 points to opposing wide receivers per game. So now you have those fantasy points per game that are coming out, that are being given out by the Rams. You get the target share there for St. Brown. You look at Jared Goff's average depth of target, or how far down the field he's throwing at a target. It's 6.9 yards. St. Brown's is, when he's being targeted by a quarterback, is 6.3 yards. So it's like he's right in his wheelhouse. They're going to have to be throwing to catch up. There's going to be a lot of garbage time in this game. This is going to be an ugly game. So give me St. Brown this week, and give me the Rams running backs. Nate, who do you got for tight end?
The lone wolf. With Zach Ertz out of town, Dallas Goddard, if you have a chance to go and acquire him, granted he's probably on most teams, but maybe not. Maybe with this whole COVID miss last week and everything else, maybe there was a chance you can pick him up. I have seen him on some waiver wires. I didn't get a chance to get him, but I love the matchup against Vegas. Vegas allows about 17.5 points to the opposing tight ends. They've allowed 4 touchdowns on the season so far. Philly's 25.6% target share to their tight end. is a huge volume amount, and usually it's spread amongst the two, Ertz and Goddard. Now with Goddard not taking the entire 25%, but name another tight end on Philly. I mean, realistically, it's from the tight end position, but that doesn't always have to be just the tight end. Obviously, the intermediate routes and safety valve that he has or that he feels from Jalen Hurts is looking in Goddard's direction. But realistically, as you get even outside of just within the 20s and you get into the red zone, if you look at Goddard and Ertz both, I mean, Ertz had 6 targets in the red zone alone. Goddard had 6. Their 12 targets in the red zone led the NFL, tied with New England. So, I mean, granted, again, I don't think all the tight end looks or the red zone looks are going to go directly to Goddard, but you have to think that if you were splitting up their work collectively and you can combine the majority, even 80%, I think you're looking at that legitimate tight end, top 4 the rest of the season. So I'm all in on Goddard this week and going forward. That's about what I got.
Nice.
Right on.
I got a question here from Malcolm Merriweather on Facebook. Would you pick up Marlon Mack? I'm assuming that's who he's talking about when he just says Mack. Yeah. I mean, if you have it's tricky, right? Because now we're in the bye weeks. Now these roster spots are kind of the real question there, Malcolm, is can you afford to bring him on? Do you have an empty spot available? Would you have to drop somebody to bring him on? It depends who you're dropping.
So,
go ahead, Nate.
I was more optimistic last week going in with the whole talk of going to Kansas City. And then Darrell Williams had the game that he had, and he looked good. He looked a lot better. I mean, I've seen Darrell Williams in spurts, and he's looked dynamic at times, but a lot of times I think every backup running back always comes in and looks like they're great because they're change of pace or just something stands out. But I think you're right. If you have the space, grab him just in case, because if he does go to KC and Andy Reid wants to deploy him, I mean, what a great scenario. But Brian, man,
I don't know. In most redraft leagues that I've done, I don't know that I have room for a speculative ad on Marlon Mack. I
guess it depends also, like, does your league have large benches, or is it like a 6 or 5 spot? If it's a 5 or if it's a 5 or 6, I wouldn't.
Well, look at his next question. So maybe that's the option: is would you drop Myles Gaskin, and Latavius Murray? I wouldn't drop Gaskin for him. I would probably Latavius Murray maybe, but I still don't know if I would.
I don't know. Let's assume that these aren't connected for a second. Okay, let's just say, would you rather? Oh, I guess it is connected. Would you drop Gaskins and Latavius Murray? Man, I am ready to get off the Gaskin bandwagon, and then he had that big game a couple weeks ago. Then he came back down to earth last week. Look, Malcolm Brown, I want to say, is out touching him or getting more attempts now. This Miami Dolphins running attack is not great, and that's me being really, really nice.
If they're winning, if they're winning, it's Malcolm Brown. If they're losing, it's Myles Gaskin. So, question is, do you think Miami's going to lose more than they win, or play from behind more than they play from ahead?
Yeah, it's who's the quarterback, and I guess that's a big thing going into this week and potentially the week after. Is for those who don't know, today on Wednesday, what is it? The 20th?
It is the 20th, I believe.
Nice. There's rumors this evening or this afternoon that Miami is close to a deal with the Houston Texans to bring over Deshaun Watson. Apparently, there's talk of it being a 3-team deal or trade, where Watson would go to Miami and Tua would go to Washington, which, okay, as a Washington fan, I don't know what to say about all that. It's, I don't know. Let's go on the flip side to Latavius Murray in Baltimore. Look, they activated. I mean, first of all, isn't it crazy? Like, all these running backs who are like quote unquote washed, basically scored and had a great day on Sunday for fantasy. But then, they activated Le'Veon Bell to the active roster this week. Who knows what that means? Tyson Williams has been gone, has been non-existent since week 1, I guess we could say.
So confused.
Latavius Murray, he has battling an injury, but he is coming back. The question is really, is this Le'Veon thing, something to pay attention to? I don't know. But for some reason, I feel more confident now in Murray than I do Gaskin. That's just where I'm seeing things go.
Yeah, it's a tough, gross choice, but yeah, I'd have to pick Murray too.
All right, thanks, Malcolm. Let's see here. Before we get into our flex off for the evening, as we do every week, look, we got to thank Clay over at Dynasty Pandemic for sponsoring the show. If you go to dynastypandemic.com, literally, it's Dynasty content left and right. A lot of cool brands out there. Dynasty Fever, Brian, your Dynasty podcast is there. Dynasty Trades HQ, Dynasty and Chill, Dynasty Warzone, Davey Marketplace, Dynasty Happy Hour, and of course us. Literally, you go to the webpage, you jump into their chat feed, which is right there on the webpage, and you just start talking shop and the community that they're building there and the people there who are answering questions and the people there who are asking questions. Everybody's just like really nice, really down to earth. And they're just having a good time talking about fantasy football without any of the drama you may see on other social media platforms. So definitely recommend going over to Dynasty Pandemic. Follow them at Dynasty Pandemic on Twitter. Follow Clay in particular at dpandemic_Clay. You can download their app. They got an app on Google and Apple. And like I said, you get their homepage, you jump in their chatter feed right there and just have fun talking about fantasy football. If you're a new brand, want to get your stuff out there, great resource, great guy who's running up this great website. So head over to dynastypandemic.com today. And with that, let's get into our flex off matchups. I'm excited to talk about these flex off matchups because these are kind of difficult ones to kind of judge, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm. Perfectly fitting for gross by week 7.
Exactly. All right, let's start us off here. I'll go with the running back position. Brian, it's you versus me right here. You're going to be in the corner of Elijah Mitchell, the San Francisco running back, going against the Indianapolis Colts, and I will be in the corner of Damian Harris of the Patriots going against the New York Jets. So why don't you kick us off, Brian? Why is Elijah Mitchell somebody that you should be flexing this week?
Okay, I will do my best. Indianapolis is second against running backs, and Damian Harris is taking on the Jets. But the good news, if you're a Mitchell manager or maybe choosing between these two, is that there's no Trey Lance probably this week. Looks like Jimmy G starting. That means a lot fewer designed runs for the quarterback position. So I think he's going to see a lot more than the 9 carries he saw in week 5 before their bye. A day that Trey Sermon only had 1. So I think Shanahan's telling us he likes Mitchell better. I think he's got a greater chance of busting out a big play. He's more explosive than Damian Harris, so I think there's some ceiling there. I think the Colts are going to feed Jonathan Taylor, and the game won't get out of hand, so I don't think it's going to be a negative game script for Elijah Mitchell. And my guy, Ramondre Stevenson, I think is going to start to eat some carries from Damian Harris, especially if they get ahead of the Jets, which is a very likely scenario. So I think I might lean Mitchell in this one.
All righty. Let me, that was good. Going on with Mitchell, just to give you some more credit there. That's something that's crashing in my office as we speak.
Your hopes of winning.
Well, coming from the judge, that is not great to hear.
That's right.
But
sorry.
No, that's okay. Look, there's no George Kittle there, so there's definitely some targets to be had in the receiving game, and you saw that in week 1 with Mitchell being utilized on both facets of the offense. And he's healthy, and we, like you said, the biggest thing here for the running game situation in San Francisco, Trey Sermon is like not an existent part of this offense that you should be concerned about taking away a lot of touches from Elijah Mitchell. But Damian Harris, he is a little banged up. I think he got banged up against the Cowboys. A little concern there, which is why all the talk of Ramondre Stevenson has been coming out of the woodwork. On the season, he is this is Damian Harris now. He is the RB12 in breakaway runs and RB9 in breakaway percentages. So basically, he's a big play waiting to happen. in this running back core here for New England. He did have like a fumbling issue. I want to say that he fumbled the ball against the Texans. And he was clearly in the doghouse since then. But since coming out of the doghouse, it's being let into the main house. He is the RB11 the past few weeks in rushing attempts and yards in the whole NFL. He's averaging during that time 15.4 fantasy points per game. The Jets are giving up the fourth most fantasy points to opposing running backs. Again, he's leading the team in rushing attempts. There has not been a real shift into a split workload, and it's the Jets, and the Patriots they're gonna do their thing, which they normally do against the New York Jets. So, give me Damian Harris this week.
Oh man, I will say, very difficult in that self-deprecating attacks from both of you two to start off your arguments. Very, very cleverly done. Gets me a little undecided. Like, I don't know if this is a setup, but they both had, credence into why and then how. So hey, look how easy of a slam dunk should Elijah Mitchell be, or should Damian Harris maybe against the Jets be? But Elijah Mitchell, the question that I have is just the impact that DeForest Buckner and Darius Leonard is going to have on this running game. And CJ Mosley is potentially out for the Jets. Granted, I feel like most of these flex offs turn into what do I think is going to happen, and I lean the direction. But as long as people validate certain key things, and Brian, you touched on one thing that led me towards Elijah Mitchell was Ramondre Stevenson's utilization in this game. The problem is Jorge's rebuttal defeated what I thought as well, is that they're going to be up in this game and they're not going to need to pass it nearly as much. In his 50.4 points per game and RB11 or 10 in rushing attempts over the past couple weeks leans the needle in Damian Harris's direction. Jorge, congratulations. You took the low-hanging fruit of the easier matchup. And
Look,
I'm kidding. It was a great argument by both.
I'll tell you this, though. I have 0 Damian Harris in any of my rosters. I have a lot of Elijah Mitchell on my roster, and I'm feeling confident starting him as my RB2 out of necessity, mind you. But I think the talent is there. And so
I want Damian Harris to have about 22 points this week or more, and then I will sell the hell out of Damian Harris if someone's buying after this week, because I don't think the pastures are not as green going forward as they will be against mean green of the Jets for sure.
Okay. I see what you did there.
Thanks.
All right, let's go wide receiver flex offs. Nate, you and I are going to be battling out in this one. You are going to be in the corner of Hollywood Brown. Man, this guy has been on a tear since the end of last season, and I was one of those people who was like, look, he's touchdown dependent. He's only getting, at most 50 yards a game, and he's not getting a lot of targets, and he's just touchdown or bust. And then, and that trend continued into this season, but then slowly but surely those yardage totals start going up, those targets start going up, those receptions start going up, and all of a sudden he's becoming more of a well-rounded wide receiver. And of course, I'm just helping your argument right now. So he's going against the Bengals this week. And I'm going to be in the corner of a wide receiver who's going to be playing tomorrow night on Thursday Night Football against the Cleveland Browns. I'm talking, of course, about Cortland Sutton. So let me, since Brian went first this last time, let me go first this time.
Yeah.
Cortland Sutton, weeks 4 through 6, is a wide receiver 10 in fantasy points per game with 15.7 points. He is the wide receiver 3 in all of football the past 3 weeks in targets. That's ridiculous. That's crazy. That is a stat that I didn't think would be a thing for him. Cleveland is allowing 20.7 fantasy points to the opposing wide receivers, the 5th most. Look, we talked about earlier in the show, Cleveland is basically without everybody, and they're having to rely on Donovan Peoples-Jones and David Njoku to help save the day. Austin Hooper, Case Keenum is the quarterback. I think somebody was mentioning there's issues with the offensive line with Cleveland. There's some injuries, there's some deficiencies there. going against this pass rush of the Denver Broncos and Von Miller. I don't see Cleveland sustaining a lot of drives. And that just means the offense for the Broncos is going to be on the field more. Cortland Sutton is leading the team in targets at wide receiver, so things are funneling through him, even in bad matchups. Like there's a couple weeks ago where I was like, no Cortland Sutton. He has a horrible matchup. He delivered. So he's been pretty consistent, pretty reliable. So give me Cortland Sutton this week.
So when I first looked at this and I thought, oh man, here's one of Jorge and I's hype piece in Cortland Sutton going into the season versus one of my do not draft wide receivers in Hollywood Brown. I realized that it can't be perfect, and clearly Hollywood has shown that he has been able to carve out a significant piece of a run happy team by comparison. It's about where the comparisons stop as far as what the expectations for this game is going to be for both of these two teams. When I look at how Baltimore and Cincinnati, and I see as a game script, I see a Baltimore defense that's underperformed the entire season, and a Cincinnati offense is ready to pounce and take a little bit back of that NFC North and prove that they belong. And that puts them in that negative game script for Baltimore, which means that I'm a little more optimistic that Hollywood's going to see that target floor that we are looking for each week out of our number one wide receiver. Conversely, Denver versus Cleveland, where you made every point for me, so I'm going to go ahead and send over a bouquet of flowers for you to say why and how bad Cleveland's going to be against this Denver team. And when you look at Denver in a positive game script, they're one of the more run-happy teams in football. And I believe this is an opportunity for, if the Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams lovers out there rejoice, this could be that game. But even if we go a little bit further deeper, the one key area about Cleveland and how they've done so poor against opposing wide receivers isn't that they allow tons of receptions and tons of yards. It's the fact that they've allowed 7 touchdowns on the season compared to Cincinnati's 1. That's bound to change this week. I see Cleveland as slowing down if they have a chance. Greedy Williams should be lined up against Cortland Sutton. And what I'm expecting to see is a bracket type coverage with one of the safeties over top. And you have this, like I said, this Cleveland team without Baker, Chubb, Hunt, maybe no JOK. I look for Denver to keep it on the ground, but the matchups alone still favor Hollywood, which is crazy because you see, like I said, Cleveland bad against against opposing wide receivers, etc. Here's the key matchup, if you ask me: Hollywood Brown versus Eli Apple. Eli Apple and the Cincinnati Bengals, when they run a predominant zone, which is what they've ran the majority of the time this season, Hollywood has absolutely eaten against opposing zone coverage to the point that he alone, if they faced exclusively 65% zone like they're normally going to, that should be able to take over Cortland Sutton's production this week in a high-scoring battle in Cincy. Or in Baltimore. I really don't know where the game's at, honestly. I probably should have known that, but
I think Baltimore,
yeah. Well, check mark against me for that.
You heard that? He said he gives up.
I concede.
He's conceding
a point because I didn't know where they played.
That's right. So Jorge wins by default. Yay. Thunder, really quickly on YouTube. James Conner or J.D. McKissick this week. Antonio Gibson has not practiced, I want to say, this week. Is dealing with that shin issue that was going into last week.
But Chase Edmonds played the fewest snaps he's played as well. He's still recovering from that shoulder. And I like McKissick more personally. I think that this is this is Teddy's week. Teddy's going to be Twitter front and center when it's McKissick week for sure.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think JD is the way to go. So thanks, Thunder. And then with that, Brian, you heard him. Renee conceded, so we can just go on to the next flex off.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding. Who do you think, if you were going to start somebody in your flex, whether it's Cortland Sutton or Hollywood Brown, who would it be?
It's a really tough one, and both of you made good arguments. I can see really this going either way. One thing that came to mind for me when thinking about Hollywood Brown, who, by the way, I've been wrong on, I have to admit that. We talked about question marks at tackle for Baltimore and how much time is Lamar going to have to throw. And, Rashad Bateman, fresh off the IR.
Hey, no one brought up Rashad Bateman. Shush.
Was tied for first in target share last week. So it's something to think about with Brown. Ultimately, though, however, I do feel that and I'm a Sutton lover. Love him, had him ranked high, was higher than consensus on him going into the season. Like, I love him. But I could see this turning into ground and pound with Milgo and Javonte Williams. Whereas I see more of a chance of a little bit of back and forth in the Baltimore Cincinnati game. So by a hair, give me Hollywood.
I never would have thought that in week 7, if you asked me between the two who I would start, and I think that I would take Hollywood over Cortland Sutton in, not knowing, of course, what's going to happen. But yeah,
it's been crazy. Wrong. It's been crazy. I think Denver is the offense, or just the offensive players in general, that has surprised me the entire season. Like, I did not see Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams being able to, not one player assert dominance over the other. Like, they literally are splitting time. Yep. Cortland Sutton coming off of the ACL, Teddy Bridgewater, what to expect there, but they've done it. And on defense, the pass rush and the secondary, they've been playing well. It's I don't know whether they're an overachieving team, but whatever they're doing, it's working.
So I was trying to scramble to pull up the stats, and I failed in trying to make my argument because I had us pulled up and I X'd out of it. Hollywood in this matchup, and it took me forever to find how much percentage Cincy runs zone, just by, so we all know it takes a lot to find all that information, but they do. It's like 65% zone. Hollywood has 22 receptions on 28 targets against the zone for 329 yards and 2 touchdowns, with an average depth of target of 15.6 yards versus 3 receptions on 6 targets against man.
Interesting.
14% target percentage versus a 65% target of the total. What he sees, his targets are mostly against zone. So yeah, very strange that it's that separate or that different.
So he had a down week last week. Was that game script, or do the Chargers play a lot of man?
It's a great question. I don't know. I'm going to say, I guess I could look it up and tell you, maybe we can do that post game, and I can then have that information. I can figure that out. I don't want to stop the butt kicking I'm about to get in this next one.
All right, let's go with our last flex matchup for the day. It's going to be the quarterback position. Brian, you're going to be in the corner of the apparently the future quarterback of the Washington football team, Tua Tagovailoa, currently with Miami.
Ryan Tannehill now.
I substituted Tannehill because I talked about Tua before.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, it's Ryan Tannehill.
Okay, all good.
Ryan Tannehill, and then Derek Carr for you, Nate. So let's go with let's go back to you, Brian. Ryan Tannehill, what do you got for us?
Okay, so I was looking at Ryan Tannehill the other night, preparing for Dynasty Fever, and I was like, he doesn't seem like he's throwing as much as he used to. And I looked it up, and he's only got 6 fewer attempts through 6 weeks than he did last year. They just don't seem to be producing as much, especially in the touchdown department. But his, 2, big time wide receivers have really not been very healthy this year. So what's in the plus side for Tannehill? Going up against Kansas City, Nate's Kansas City Chiefs, who rank 30th in pass rush according to PFF and 29th in coverage according to PFF. I think his wide receivers are getting healthier, although, we just talked about Julio, but A.J. Brown, 7 catches, 91 yards. And they did that and looked pretty good against a good Buffalo defense on Monday night. And I think this is a game that they'll likely have to score a lot. So, yeah, they're always going to feed Henry. But, Tannehill's got more options now, and I think it'll be a high-scoring game. On the flip side, with Carr, Philadelphia 14th against quarterbacks, so, not too bad, almost middle of the pack. But they, is probably not – Carr's not going to be in a game where he's probably going to have to chuck it much in this one. And Philadelphia, when he does chuck it, is 9th against the pass rush. 9th in pass rush. And we saw which Bosa is on the Chargers? Joey.
Yep.
Yeah, have that quote about once you hit Carr a couple times, he gets rattled. So I think Tannehill's arrow is pointing up as the season goes, and give me him against KC.
All right, Nate. Derek Carr. Why should people believe in him this week against Philadelphia?
So, yes, Kansas City is an easily attackable defense to look at as a why would my quarterback do well. I think it's just as easy to look at and say, hey, why would my running back do well when you're facing the 9th ranked defense against opposing running backs on the season as well. And I think we know Derrick Henry clearly is going to get his. Is there a chance that Tennessee gets behind and has to pass early and often? Yeah, there's a chance. There definitely is. The one benefit that the Chiefs have this week going into this matchup, if you ask me, in terms of overall pass rush, is that Chris Jones is coming back. And Chris Jones is now going to line up as defensive tackle, I believe, this week. I think they want that interior pressure. I think that's what they felt. Spagnuolo has said that he feels that the interior rush and the pressure from the inside has a lateral effect outside to the ends. And I believe that's what he's going to get back to doing, is letting Chris Jones monopolize the middle, get that interior pressure, and hopefully slow down Ryan Tannehill. But I'm not trying to make a case against Tannehill. The case in this is for why Derek Carr. I don't think for why is a proper term, but that just says how awesome it is. I can't even speak English when I think about Derek Carr. I start using hyperbole, superlatives, etc. What is not a hyperbole? What is not a superlative? Is that the Philadelphia defense against opposing quarterbacks on the fantasy perspective is rough. They have eaten up opposing quarterbacks. But here's the good news. Derek Carr is the antithesis to that. Against good defenses, he feasts. He carved up Denver last week. Denver, who hadn't allowed but 2 passing touchdowns on the season, he threw for 2 against them. Now, granted, it's Denver. That's just one game. But that's the type of game that I watch Derek Carr, unfortunately, against my Chiefs. He always seems to come in the big games. And I know this is the eye test. I know it's a gut. I know it's not statistics to back it up. But it does feel like Derek Carr always does have that big game against defenses that he's not supposed to. I do believe that Philly's offense is going to have a better chance than what we think against this defense as a whole to keep it competitive. What's Philly's weakness on defense? Their weakness is coverage across the middle and on deep balls. Their coverage across the middle consists of Eric Wilson, the 30th ranked linebacker in coverage on the season, and Alex Singleton, the 45th ranked linebacker in coverage. Yes, there are 47 linebackers that have achieved at least 20% of their coverage snaps at linebackers. That makes him the second worst, or 46. He's the second worst linebacker. Derek Carr is going to go across the middle a lot. Henry Ruggs likes to sit across the middle. So does Hunter Renfrow, as well as a Darren Waller. Luckily, you think, man, maybe it's not just the middle. Can they look deep? Does Derek Carr throw the ball deep? He does. He throws the ball deep more than any other quarterback in the NFL. And who's backing coverage potentially for that? That would be one Anthony Harris, who is the 11th worst defensive back in coverage. Derek Carr has the opportunity to take advantage of these weaknesses across the Eagles defense. No more Nathan Gary, unfortunately, but we still have, unfortunately for me, I would have loved it. But yes, Derek Carr against the Eagles in what many would consider a bustable week. Look for him to bust out again.
Man, this is tough for me because you all know how high I've been on Ryan Tannehill the past couple seasons, and then to see what's been going on with him. this season has been troubling. Man, both of you guys. I mean, your points. The matchup is technically great for Carr. Brian, you brought up the deficiencies for Kansas City. But Nate, you also brought up a good point that this defensive line for Kansas City is going to get a bump with Chris Jones returning the offensive tackles for Tennessee. Just the offensive line as a whole is not living up to what it's been. On the flip side, Derek Carr, we see the same thing every year, right? Like he's an efficient passer down the field. He's pretty accurate. He almost gets you to the point in a season where you can say maybe he's not a game manager. Like, oh, maybe he has this potential to be something more. But I feel like as seasons wear on, he's basically like just the don't mess up guy. And he either really does well at that or he really doesn't. It's going to be a tough matchup this week. My concern, going back to Tannehill, I'm sorry, I'm just dragging this out. My concern here with Tannehill is, Monday Night Football against a tough Bills defense. I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, let's see here. We got Derrick Henry. Okay, good. That's going to draw defenders in towards the box, and they're probably going to find a way to shut down this Titans offense, being one-dimensional as it has been in recent weeks. Mm-hmm. But no, they had Julio Jones back. They had A.J. Brown back. Okay, well, now they have two premier wide receivers that can stretch the field and draw attention away from Derrick Henry and make this defense play more honest. And guess what? The Titans were lighting it up. They were putting up points. They were doing their thing. And then Julio Jones goes and gets hurt again, and A.J. Brown has been underperforming. They talked about snap counts going into last week. Whether or not that was actually honored or not is a different story. I don't know. But Tennessee seems to me like the team, like their guys, their weapons have to be full go for them to really unlock this offense. And if it's not, then I think you're going to see more of the same, despite the good matchup this week. So I'm going to lean towards Derek Carr. As bad as Kansas City is, Philly is just a lot worse. So let me give Derek Carr, but it's not by much. So Derek Carr wins, or Nate wins this week. And that hurts me to say because you all, like I said, big Ryan Tannehill fan. And with that, that's going to wrap up our episode here of Fourth and Frames. We got another question from Thunder. Let's see here. Start 2, Jacoby Myers, Tyler Lockett, Jalen Waddle. So got Jacoby versus the Jets.
Not crazy.
What's up?
I think I'm sitting Tyler Lockett. I don't want to.
I mean, no. I mean, you saw I think during Pittsburgh, he got like the lowest target share of any wide receiver for Seattle against Pittsburgh. I want to say this is the week that Jacoby Myers gets that touchdown where it's not, called back. If it's not against the Jets, then who's it going to be against, right?
So happy for him when he scored.
Yeah.
On.
And then, of course, that was ripped away as the penalty flag came out. Give me Myers and Waddle. What about you, Brian? What are your thoughts here?
Wow. Yeah. Lockett's got Geno too. The Saints are, not a pushover as far as the matchup goes. I just, I can't justify starting Jacoby Myers over Tyler Lockett. And I've been down on Lockett a little bit. So, but still, give me Lockett and Waddle.
How about you, Nate?
I mean, I have a hard time disagreeing with Brian in that it always comes back like my end result always figures to go, am I going to hate myself for doing one or the other? And I would hate myself by letting Tyler Lockett have the 50-point week on the bench more so than the tried. I think Jacoby Myers' ceiling and versus floor is a narrow gap. Tyler Lockett's is enormous. It's 13. Yeah. It's a sky rise. There's huge. I still really like Jacoby Myers this week, and I really want to, but I have a hard time recommending someone to sit Tyler Lockett just because of that potential ceiling play.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm just beating around the bush. I feel like I'm not trying to be committed to it, but I want to say start Jacoby Myers and Jalen Waddle.
Yeah, Yeah, I'm not optimistic about the Seattle offense going forward. I see more success with the running backs, actually, DJ Dallas in particular, and Alex Collins. Just
Shit, it might be Travis Homer. Alex
yeah,
Collins
I
might
mean,
not even play.
yeah, this is exactly my point. We're talking about Seattle Seahawks offensive weapons, and the very first thought that are Homer and Collins
exactly.
and Dallas, and now Rashad Petty is off of IR, so I don't know if he's going to be activated. So you throw that into the mix, and you're not talking about DK Metcalf and and Tyler Lockett. It's just it's crazy, and we had such high hopes. It's not looking good for Seattle. Anywho, so thanks for the question again, Thunder. If you have any more questions, head over to your little Twitter app and open that sucker up and add us at Fantasy and Frames or at Jorge B. Edwards or at Nate Markham or at FFJunkie_. We are there to answer all of your fantasy football questions. Head over to fantasyandframes.com and read all of our content from our waiver wire articles. If you maybe still need ideas of people to pick up to fill up your bench spots during this bye week hell that is week 7. Read them, Nate. You put out your IDP articles, and then Tyler put out the offense articles, and then today we put out our start and sits from Teddy Ricketson. And tomorrow we're putting out our quarterback and tight end matchups, and then wide receivers and running backs on Friday, and then IDP on Saturday, and then 4-Ed pregame show like we do every Sunday, 10 a.m. Eastern to 11 a.m. Eastern. Join us then. Ask all your questions. Start the questions. We're going to be there for you, giving all sorts of information that'll help you win your matchup this week in week 7 of the fantasy football season. So for Brian, for Nate, I am Jorge. We will see you all next time.